to live to be 5 to 10,000 years old. They arrived in the atmosphere of Earth and suddenly, they're aging really fast. Oops. So they needed to discover how to prevent that aging. Sadly, this technology came from Sirius A, ability to build capacitors to prevent aging, and basically they forgot how to use it, the klutzes. Because one of the symptoms of this Nephilim fall, remember, the Nephilim fall has many symptoms. Loss of long-term memory was one of them.
Alzheimer's.
Basically. And loss of ability to lucid dream, loss of ability to take memory through death, loss of ability electrically to radiate capacitance to make an immune system in their babies.
Heavy metal contamination.
Yeah, exactly. That would be related. So, for example, when the Dracos screwed with the Khmer, the reticulum, which we call the Greys, they lost the ability to make an immune system in their babies. I mean, it's bad news, and we're going in that direction real fast as a gene pool, unless we learn these lessons.
So they came down here and they had a hard time with the atmosphere.
Yes.
This is from another line of story that I know. That means they had to go into high elevations, so that's why they went to Tibet, that's why they went to Machu Picchu, that's why they went to high elevation places to live, because there was less atmosphere.
Yes, that's a good thought. And also, those are the places more likely perhaps to have caves where the capacitance was fractal enough to keep the DNA alive. So a dragon in a cave breathing fire is actually someone whose DNA is charge implosive enough to breathe capacitance, to breathe charge. Yeah, and so the whole story of this culture, again, is about igniting DNA, the title of our story, igniting DNA. That was the whole crux of their issue. So that brings us to the local politics now. We come to this situation where, yes?
And that's the whole harmonic convergence, this thing coming up in 2012 or a few years earlier, the alignment of the planets such that these...
Harmonic convergence is a crude name for harmonic inclusive implosion. So when harmonics can be inclusive, it's basically because of golden ratio making implosion. So harmonic convergence means how could harmonics converge, and the physics is clear. It has to be implosion. So yes, very much, yes.
I was trying to get clear exactly what it was that caused the Nephilim, to go into the fallen state. Was it their life, like their lifestyle being too technologically oriented? Was that the cause, or was there an event, a cause of an
genetic
event?
disease.
There is a story told by a dragon queen. Her name is Corinna Muller from Milan, and had memory. And she claims to recall a particular battle in the Dracu culture where, you know, they were fiercely survivalistic and warrior-like. And in that particular battle, they suffered what was akin to a nuclear blast that mutated their gene pool. And at that point, instead of having one heart, they had two hearts. We know in Phil Schneider and others' personal reports of the Draco at Dulce that they had two hearts and were highly telepathic, hard to kill. And the split heart was in some ways an end to the possibility of real compassion. And this is repeated in some of the myths, so that's a piece of the story. Another piece of the story is the loss of bliss making in the blood for the Vestal Virgin culture, and addiction to gold powder, and the use of too much metal in their environment. And all of those things cause DNA to lose charge.
2 stars, 2 hearts.
2 stars, 2 hearts, twinning. So we had 2 comments here. One is that about the money aspect. Classically, this culture then becomes a culture that regards harvesting DNA like banking. And so the origin of banking insurance, which is credited to the Templars, actually came from the Dracu, who were harvesting hundreds of planetoids in a similar way. And this, your story about creating a gene pool that then rebels, this culture creates at least 3 different gene pool experiments on Earth, and like the Lemurian, they basically get out of control and get away and escape from the Matrix. And
Does
so
that mean you don't go through the sun? Just take the longer route and go somewhere else?
Well, the humanoids who escaped, the Lemurian story is the humanoids won, Lim Uru. The humanoids won against the Uru, by a nuclear blast which destroyed the atmosphere. And so the remnant humanoids had to go underground, and their blood is said to have changed from green to red, chlorophyll to heme, because they no longer had the access to the oxygen, and they had to use iron to fix oxygen in blood. And that's where we got the Adamic race, which is the next one, which means red man or iron man. So the first attempt, the Lemurian, is actually a genetic experiment that got away from the Dracu culture, escaped the matrix. And this series of rebellions is described in several books, actually. So yes, creating a gene pool that then gets away. And so there are many reasons politically why Enki is legally required not to give too much psychokinesis to his genetic experiments. And when he used his own sperm here, and that's the next part of the story, that was highly illegal. So here's what happened. Just brief, most of you know this part of the story, but the gold mining operations were a pain in the ass. These Anunnaki couldn't handle it, and so they needed to make some gold mining slaves. There was a rebellion in South Africa. Remember that Enki is assigned to South Africa, which later became the word Kilimanjaro, meaning Enki. And Enlil is assigned to North Africa. So you have the white race here. And here, Enki, remember, Enki's blood is blue-black from black here. So you have the black pharaoh, the Nubian, the Coptic, and the story that the black pharaoh that became Akhenaten, who was black. And so later, when Akhenaten changed his name to Moses, in the statue at Rennes-le-Château, you see that the devil Lucifer, who's really Enki, is black. He has horns. Moses, Akhenaten, horns. And he is, in the statue, holding up Magdalene. And so clearly, Magdalene's blood comes from Lucifer. And this drove Saunier insane at Rennes-le-Château. He couldn't handle when he discovered the history. But the history is true. The guy that he was calling the devil is basically the father of his hero, Magdalene. Oops! We got our PR a little screwed up here, didn't we? And so this is the black and white story of the whole Rennes-le-Château. And there's whole new books about what drove Saunier nuts. Anyway, so Enki, blue-black bud, Chem, became the name for Egypt from access to the place of blackness and chemistry and alchemy, has this assignment. He says, look, I could take some of the local Cro-Magnon and make some gold mining slaves by upgrading their DNA slightly. And he sends a message back to Sirius A on 2 and says, hey, Dad, we could get this gold mining back on track if we made some gold mining slaves over here. And Enlil, Michael, correctly, Yahweh, says, no, Dad, that's illegal in our culture. It would interfere with the guild right of star navigating. He was right. Thou shalt not interfere with indigenous gene pools, the prime directive. And by the way, when the Andromedans categorize all the 22 different ETs who mess with our DNA, the two categories are interventionist and non-interventionist, right? So Procyon, Tau Ceti, Sirius A, Andromeda, Arcturus, these are non-interventionist cultures. Whereas the interventionist, you have Alpha Draconis, Sirius B. So this was a non-interventionist rule, and Anu cables back, he says, well, I know it's against the rules, but look, we're going to die without this here gold powder, so he gives Enki the go-ahead. Now the neat thing about that is that Enki picked the why did Enki pick the Cro-Magnon he did?
The exercise compassion.
Thank you. Go to the head of the class. Enki noticed that one of the local apes was seen actually exhibiting compassion to the other animals. This was shockingly interesting. The real physics here, it means that phase conjugation was still operative in some of the high monkeys there. So this was a highly vibrant DNA that actually had compassion. And so this created a DNA that was actually dominant over Enki's own reptilian DNA, was recessive, was less strong. Their DNA was weakening. Anyway, so Enki basically rapes an egg. For the first bunch, he used Cro-Magnon DNA and Cro-Magnon eggs, but these were not fertile. And then he decides he needs a fertile, the first Eve. And so he takes a Cro-Magnon egg, and it's a kind of rape. And this is how we need to understand. Yes, go ahead.
The Cro-Magnon, they were from Earth.
Yes.
They had been born at the time.
Indigenous from rather ancient Earth. And perhaps their ancient roots of these Cro-Magnon were related to the bloodlines on Lyra. That's part of the story, that the ancient home of a lot of DNA came from Earth millennia, millions of years earlier.
That's a chicken or egg question.
That it is. It's kind of a Groundhog Day story here. So the Cro-Magnon egg, you know, the story is that you're doing shamanic recapitulation, rebirthing for the whole gene pool. Now you need to get back to the moment of conception. Hello, because that's how you do rebirthing, right? So here's the rebirth. Look, a little rape going on here, a little pain in the past. So the Cro-Magnon egg is raped, really, and put in his half-sister, Ninhursag, Inanna, depends who you believe. Hog, Mog, Magog, Sog, Hag. Og, you see the word Mog here. Og means fire going within, and Mog means matrix or mother of fire. Yeah? So fire in the blood comes from the Mog. It's really true, ignited blood. So this theme, remember, ignition of blood, title of the story. So half-sister Ninhursag Inanna, it gets to be the wet nurse for an egg from a Cro-Magnon, and of course, Enki is promiscuous. This fella is just leaking sperm all over the place. I'm sorry. This guy is a colorful character. Reminds me of, yes, we won't go into it. Yeah. Pardon? Amenhotep. These guys leaked sperm a lot, which is, I mean, you know, for better or for worse.